Welcome and thank you for standing by. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. All participants are in listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. At that time, you may press star 1 to ask a question. I would now like to turn the call over to Josh Finch. Thanks. You may begin.
Good evening and welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our media teleconference from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Josh Finch with NASA's Office of Communications. We're here to discuss NASA's Boeing Orbital Flight Test 2 mission, the second uncrewed flight test of the CST-100 Starliner spacecraft on an Atlas V rocket to the International Space Station as a part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Teams from NASA and Boeing just completed the flight readiness review for the mission, and representatives are here to talk more about this important review. Today we have Kathy Leaders, Associate Administrator for Human Exploration and Operations at NASA, Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joel Montalbano, Manager, NASA's International Space Station Program, John Vollmer, Vice President and Program Manager at Boeing's Commercial Crew Program, and Norm Knight, Director, NASA's Flight Operations Directorate. We're going to begin with opening comments from our speakers and then open it up for your questions. To get into the queue, you can press star 1 on your phone. And with that, we'll begin with comments from Kathy.
So thank you for being here. You know, yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the shuttle retirement. And at least a few of us here in the room today had been working at that time on a team that had started to lay kind of the seeds that some of that growth is now showing up now today through this Starliner development. And so I just want to reflect on, and while you're sitting in flight readiness reviews, it's really a time of reflection because you sit here and you think about all the work that these teams have done. I mean, in some ways, as people go through all the different areas and the things that they've been working on, it's just this testimony of, you know, where people have spent years to get to this moment. And so today we conducted our flight test readiness review for the reflight of the Boeing Starliner uncrewed demonstration mission, and we've officially set that launch date for July 30th. These are very important reviews where the station and the commercial crew and the Boeing teams really stop and scrutinize the work that they have done to get ready for this flight. And so we're here with our counterparts and our international partners and sitting carefully and making sure that we're ready to go. The team presented their detailed readiness, which also included all their lessons learned from the independent review team that was conducted after OFT-1, and went through all their corrective actions very carefully that both the Boeing and NASA teams had done, and reviewed the work that had been done to close out all those actions. So after reviewing the team's data and the readiness of all the parties, everybody said go for the launch today and moving out for the mission. It was an incredibly detailed review, and the team really showed all that work that they had done to get us here. So to me, this review was a reflection of the diligence and the passion of this Boeing and NASA team that really chose to learn and adapt and come back stronger for this uncrewed demonstration mission. So I'm really looking forward to the launch next week and the mission to station and getting some work done for Joel for a little bit and coming back home safely and then moving on to crewed flight. Thank you.
Let's see, as Kathy said, I was one of those individuals. This is Steve Stitch, the Commercial Crew Program Manager, and I was one of those individuals back at the end of Shuttle that was sort of laying out the framework for how we would go operate this program and what the requirements would be. And it's pretty exciting to be here today to think about where we've come from those days where we were trying to figure out what the requirements were and how we would implement the program to today, where yesterday we moved the Crew 2 vehicle. We had Shane, Megan, Aki, and Toma move the Crew 2 vehicle from the Node 2 forward port to the Zenith port to make room for the Starliner flight. That was very exciting. And then participating in the flight readiness review today was another exciting moment. The review was very thorough today. We went through a lot of the aspects of the flight. We talked about some of the issues we had on the last flight with the flight software, with the launch time, the service module, the CM disposal issues, and also the comm anomalies. We went through those in a lot of detail. We talked today at the review about the independent review team that NASA and Boeing formed together, how we closed out the actions. There were 61 for the flight software, 19 for the communication system. So those have been closed out as we move forward. We also talked about the importance of this flight. If I look forward to flying crew, very important for the commercial crew program to have 2 space transportation systems. This will be the second of those. And we talked about that this vehicle really is very close to a crewed vehicle, and I know John Bulmer will talk more about that. The Atlas launch vehicle will fly on OFT-2 is exactly the same configuration we'll fly the crew on. We'll have aborts enabled for the first time on this mission, and the service module associated with Starliner has the launch abort engine, so it's important to have that active for the flight. You know, we're looking toward the launch opportunity. Right now, the launch opportunity we're targeting, as we set today, July 30th. It's 2:53 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is the launch time. We would dock about 24 hours later on that Saturday, the 31st of July, and then we would work toward an undocking on August the 5th and landing that same day. So it's a relatively short flight plan, but we'll take the time that we need to when we get there. The primary landing site would be the White Sands Space Harbor, and then we have a lot of activities planned during the flight. Really, this flight, one of the important systems we'll test is the rendezvous and docking system. We'll test the NASA docking system. We'll test the rendezvous sensor system. Those things you can test on the ground in analysis and in testing in simulators, but at some point you've got to go fly those systems, and that's one of the important aspects of this flight is testing the rendezvous and docking, staying docked to station. We'll test the audio system while we're docked to station, and a few other objectives. And we're really looking forward to this flight from a commercial crew perspective. It's really an honor to be a part of the team. You know, over the last 18 months, the Boeing and NASA team have worked side by side to resolve numerous issues, to go through and close out requirements, and, you know, we're really ready to go fly now, so it's an exciting time. And when I look forward to a crewed flight, this mission is really the key to crewed flight, as we talked about as soon as later this year, getting these systems tested on this test flight and then setting us up for the crewed flight later this year. And now I'll turn it over to Joel Montalbano from the Space Station Program.
Hey, thank you, Steve, and welcome again to today's press brief. We continue to have a very busy summer on board the International Space Station with multiple missions coming and going, and we're constantly reviewing the flight plan to make sure we're maximizing the capabilities of the International Space Station. With 7 people on board, 3 Americans, 1 Japanese agency astronaut, 1 European Space Agency astronaut, and 2 Russian cosmonauts. So we have an opportunity on board to maximize research and utilization, maximize the technology development that we can do for the lunar program, and then continue our LEO commercialization efforts. From an ISS status standpoint, the ISS is in really good shape. The 2 new recently installed solar arrays are generating power and operating nominally, and that at the completion of the 3 EVAs we did last month. Like Steve and Kathy said, we've had a number of reviews to prepare for the OFT-2 mission, and while we have some standard work to go, the International Space Station team is ready, and we're looking forward to the Starliner vehicle and the continuation of the commercial crew program. This vehicle is carrying about 200 kilograms of pressurized cargo to ISS and returning about 260 kilograms from ISS. As Steve said, the vehicle will just stay a few days, and we look forward to having 2 crewed vehicles on board ISS for the very first time. With this mission, we're increasing the robustness of the ISS program by getting the agency closer to another certified crew provider, which allows the space station team and the agency and the international partnership to further the activities we do on board the space station. This partnership continues 20-plus years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station. And our partnership with commercial industry is changing history by opening up low Earth orbit to more people, more science, and more commercial opportunities. So in that, a huge thanks to the Commercial Crew Program, the Boeing team, for getting us to where we are today. We are a solid ecosystem. We're ready to go, and we're looking forward to this mission. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Joel. So first of all, it's an honor and a privilege to be here today. This is certainly a very exciting time for the Boeing Company, and we understand it comes with some awesome responsibilities. We understand it's paramount that we ensure the safety of the International Space Station, its crew, and that we accomplish our mission of test objectives, return our vehicle safely to Earth, and do so in a manner that ensures public safety as well. To that end, the Boeing team has worked tirelessly with NASA to look at all aspects of readiness to accomplish this mission and ensure we have the safest vehicle possible. Over the past 18 months, we've worked through the pandemic. We've had numerous weather issues and other challenges, but this NASA Boeing team has taken an exhaustive look at our processes, tools, and products. I think one of the biggest areas we focused on has been the hardware-software integration, and I use the term hardware-software integration versus software because we really looked at the integration of that software into the overall product, how it worked with our subsystems, and the end-to-end performance. So that was one area of focus. We also have spent a great deal of effort to configure this vehicle, as Steve mentioned, as close as possible to the crewed configuration. One, to reduce risk, and two, to leverage as much testing as possible on this flight. An example that was mentioned was the full abort capability that we had. On the first OFT mission, we had mass simulators. We elected to put the full abort system in, and it will be active through all phases of flight. We also incorporated some crew displays and some numerous minor design changes, grounding heaters, sensors, wiring, but all to make this vehicle as close as possible to the crewed flight vehicle. Right now, the Starliner vehicle is fully integrated with the Atlas V in the vertical integration facility. Yesterday, we completed our end-to-end testing, and that was primarily our communications testing with the TEDRA system and verified our communication with Mission Control. Today, we completed all of the testing with the Atlas vehicle to ensure all the interfaces are functional and operate as expected. And all are healthy and communicating as we expected. So I'm really proud of this NASA, Boeing, and ULA team. I know this clean flight readiness review we had today and heading into the week was really due to the hard work and dedication of all the teams that participated. This isn't the first day we've been working on readiness. So we have been literally working on this for months and months. And so this is really the culmination of a lot of hard work by all the teams. We've been keeping Butch, Nicole, and Mike in the loop frequently as we progress toward this flight to make sure that we are looking at their inputs toward our crewed flight vehicle, which will occur after this. And I'd also like to emphasize that we are working very closely with our flight and mission ops. They were instrumental in our success on the first OFT mission, and they will be integral to our success as we fly this flight as well. Because this is a test flight, we will have an objective of really listening to our hardware and understanding what the hardware is trying to tell us so that we can ensure that we incorporate that learning into our next flight and that we've got the safest vehicle possible. So once again, it's a privilege to be here, and we are ready to fly. Norm, over to you.
Okay, thanks, John. You know, great review today, like everyone said, and we're clearly satisfied that the objective of keeping the ISS crew safe, their vehicles safe, and achieving the mission objectives of OFT-2 have been satisfied with this review, so it was really great. Kathy started the meeting this morning and allowed the CFT crew, Butch Wilmore, Nicole Mann, and Mike Fink, to come in and just briefly say hello to the team and thank them, and really provide some focus that, you know, this mission, OFT-2, is the precursor for putting crew on the vehicle. So it really provided a good frame of reference and mental attitude for the team as, you know, they started and participated in the review today. OFT-2 is important, obviously, because it's the first end-to-end checkout from pre-launch to docking to undocking to post-landing that we get, and that's what buys down the risk and makes it safe for putting crew on the vehicle after a successful test flight. While this mission does not have crew, the CFT astronauts have been intimately involved, working side by side the Boeing and ULA teams as they progress to this point. You know, as John said yesterday during some vehicle comm checks and checkouts, the CFT team was right alongside, and that's great. It builds trust, builds camaraderie, and again, just keeps the focus on that the next step is crew. Tomorrow is a mission dress rehearsal for OFT-2. The crew will be in the Boeing Mission Control Center over here in Florida, and so they'll be watching the engineering team go through some of the pre-launch activities, and then, of course, listening in to the collective efforts as the Houston and Florida teams work together to simulate and count down to launch. You know, spaceflight's hard. It is definitely not easy, and I'll just tell you that the crew greatly appreciates the effort by NASA, Boeing, and the ULA partnership for safe spaceflight for our astronauts. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Norm. We'll now start taking questions over the phone. As a reminder, please press *1 to get into the queue. And we'll take our first question from Irene Klotz at Aviation Week.
Thanks so much. I wanted to know, first of all, what the time period for getting OFT-2 airborne is, and if that's dependent on the successful docking of the Russian research module that launched, I've lost track of days, I think it was yesterday, and just what other beta cutouts or ISS operational issues are going on that could affect the schedule for OFT-2. Thanks.
This is Joel. I'll start, and then people can add. We've been working with Roscosmos to set up that the choreography, and we have it set up such that the MLM would dock on the 29th, and then that would open us up for a launch on the 30th. So all that work is done. We still, as you know, had an MLM launch yesterday. We'll have a progress on dock, taking away the docking compartment, and we still have that in front of us. But all that has been timelined with the flight control team, and we're ready to go. I don't know, Steve, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say right now there's no beta cutouts or anything like that. We can go fly in this time frame. You know, we have the 30th of July as the prime launch opportunity. There's a bit of a range conflict on July 31st, and so the next opportunity would be on August the 3rd when the trajectory is favorable for another opportunity. But we'll work closely with the ISS program and Joel as things evolve. As Joel said, right now the plan is for MLM to dock on the 29th, well ahead of our launch on the 30th.
Okay, so just to clarify, does MLM need to be docked before OFT-2 would launch?
It does not. We can support the OFT docking with or without the MLM.
And our next question is from Jeff Faust at Space News.
Yeah, good afternoon. You talked about doing a crewed flight test as soon as later this year. Assuming OFT-2 goes as planned and there are no issues with it, can you be more specific as the earliest possible date for crewed flight tests based on the work you would need to do to prepare for that mission, as well as the visiting vehicle schedule for the ISS? Thanks.
Yeah, right now, you know, we don't have an exact date planned for the crewed flight test. I think the most important thing, and the thing that the Boeing and NASA team have been focused on in the near term, is is the execution of the orbital flight test. That has been our primary focus. What we'll do is go execute this flight, work our way down through the launch countdown, and get the vehicle launched and then safely on orbit. Then we'll execute the demonstration objectives, and we'll work through all those things for a new vehicle coming to ISS, and get docked and land. And then we have a post-flight time frame where we'll assess how the vehicle performed, and we'll look at that. And then, later on, we'll then start solidifying what the crewed flight test date is. But we don't have a specific date in mind. It looks like right now, by the end of the year, would be supportable. But again, we really need to focus on the orbit flight test first and get that flight right.
As a reminder, if you have a question for any of the panel, please press star 1 on your phone. Our next question will go to Michael Maidenberg at the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, good evening. Could someone from NASA describe, just with a little more detail, some of the steps, reviews, efforts it took to, provide oversight over Boeing, and how it's carrying out its end of this flight? And Mr. Vollmer, at Boeing's end, what did the company do differently, this time around in the run-up compared to last time? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take the first part, and then I'll let John respond as well. So, NASA has a pretty standard process of getting ready for these flights, where we have a series of data deliveries that Boeing provides to us, and we go through and analyze all the information provided for Boeing. In many cases, we do an independent analysis or assessment of that and approve each one of those products. In particular, for the independent review team and the flight software actions, we had a team from NASA kind of embedded with the Boeing team, looking at all of their changes to the flight software, the changes to their flight software process. I would say, echo what John said, what they have focused on is hardware-software integration in the facilities in Houston, where they can test the avionics system and the flight software together. They can inject faults. They can fail flight computers and avionics components. We've sat through all those runs side by side with John and his team and reviewed the progress of each of those tests. The Boeing team also went through a very extensive mission rehearsal, where they, in the hardware-software integration facility, starting with launch all the way through docking and undocking, we participated in that activity and reviewed all those results side by side with John and his team. So I think that gives you a little flavor of how we work items side by side.
Plus the standard reviews that you have with our stage operations readiness review with the station program and all the culmination of that. Plus, there's, on the commercial crew program side, there's a detailed flight test readiness review that they conduct too. So both programs, along with the Boeing folks, obviously, and John can talk about this in a little bit, having all their internal reviews. Today was really the culmination of all those from a NASA perspective, where both programs and Boeing came in and really talked through all the remaining work, which all there was really standard open work. Let me clarify that, standard open work. And so it was a very clean review for us heading into, and really what ensured us all being go today for the flight next week. So like Steve said, there's obviously a lot of work being done at lower levels, and then both programs have a very standard review process that they go make sure that all the verification activities and analysis work that needs to be done to be able to close out their requirements for each of the programs is closed out, and then at the agency level we also close out. Sorry, thanks.
Okay, hey, this is John Vollmer. Some of the things we did different for this flight, and you'll hear some echoing of what Steve Stitch said, because we're obviously working close together, but we did look at the IRT. We looked at all of those items that coming out of it. There was a big portion of those items which were process related. So we went and looked at our processes. We institutionalized our responses to those processes so that we incorporated the learning from that into our processes. One of the big things was peer reviews. We ensured that we had our subsystem responsible engineers, as we went through our software flight test, that they were integral to the testing throughout all phases. So as we looked at the requirements, we brought the responsible engineer to make sure that they concurred that was the right requirement. We then went on and looked at, okay, so what's the design solution for that requirement? We had the responsible engineer come in and agree that looks like the right design solution. We got into the test requirements and look at the test. Does this look like the right test? All the way through the life cycle until we got through the final test and made sure that, in fact, these are the results you expected from the requirement that we started with. And so that was a fundamental change to how we were doing things, and we formalized how we did that. The other thing that we did was, outside of the IRT, which drove a lot of things, was we introduced the ASIL mission rehearsal. The ASIL mission rehearsal was an extensive review of an end-to-end look at the software scenarios from beginning of flight through the end of flight. And as part of that process, we tied in Mission Control Center both in Houston and in Florida, and we tied in our ULA partners as well. So we truly had an integrated mission rehearsal, simulated mission from end to end that we ran, and we got a lot of learning out of that. So that was something we introduced that was different from the last flight. And the other thing I'd like to talk about is, as we strengthened our IVV, our Independent Verification and Validation Program. So we brought on an independent contractor. We had them report up through an independent path through the Boeing company to take another set of eyes to look at all of our work and ensure that they didn't see anything that was out of line or needed to be addressed. They were actually very helpful. We invited NASA to participate in that as well. They came up with observations and findings. They brought those into the team environment, and the team worked through all of those. So those were some of the fundamental changes that you're asking about.
And our next question is from Bill Harwood at CBS News.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Steve, just to follow up on Jeff Faust's question, I don't know that anybody was looking for a specific date, but can you at least ballpark CFT for us? I mean, with JWST and Artemis 1 and CFT, I mean, you know, some of us might spontaneously combust before this is all over. I'm just trying to get a sense of when, you know, October, November, December, you guys might be planning to do this. And a quick follow-up, since I've got the line, since the abort system is going to be hot for this flight, will the group that I guess they used to be called Detachment 3, will those guys be doing any kind of rehearsing since you're going to go ahead and fly this mission? Thanks.
Yeah, I would say, Bill, boy, I would love to give you a date, but we just aren't that far along. You know, again, we've been really working hard on OFT-2 and CFT and the crewed flight test. And as John said, this vehicle is very representative of the crewed vehicle. It's almost identical, and we've been focused on this flight. So we just really don't have. We really need to sit down after the flight is over. We need to review all the data, and then sit down, look at the ISS schedule, and then figure out a date. So I just really can't provide that today. In terms of the Detachment 3, you know, they will be there for the crewed flight test, and we'll be participating. They are not part of this flight, the test, this orbit flight test. So they're really not participating, but they are ready. They are trained. They have tested their procedures off the Atlantic here in the tidal basin, and also in Houston as well. So thank you.
And then figure out a date. So I just really can't provide that today.
And we'd like to make sure that everyone, if you're not speaking, has their mic muted. Thanks. And our next question will go to Joe Roulette at The Verge.
Hey, thank you. Question for John Vollmer. In light of, you know, a few years of, you know, setbacks that Boeing has faced, either on its commercial airplane side or you know, the space unit side, I was just kind of wanted to get you to speak a little bit more about how kind of crucial this Starliner mission is going to be for Boeing's space program. What will it signal to the public, and kind of how important is it for the Starliner teams that are working on it? And then I had another question for Kathy or Steve. If you guys could just summarize real quick the changes in oversight and how you guys verified and validated Boeing's software and other systems this time around as opposed to before OFT-1. Thanks.
Okay. Hey, Joel, this is John Vollmer. So from a standpoint of how important is this to the Boeing company, so this is extremely important. This is a serious and unforgiving business, right? So we take it very seriously. It's extremely important to us that we're successful on this flight. We have all that we've done over the past 18 months. We are very confident that we are going to have a good flight. Will there be some learning? There'll absolutely be some learning during this flight. It is a test flight, and so the intent is that we want to go fly this vehicle. There are systems on this vehicle that we need to fully understand how they operate in the environment of space. So we will be monitoring those systems. We'll be collecting the learning from those systems so that we can incorporate that in and help us build the safest vehicle we can for the crewed flights. So it's of paramount importance that we have a successful flight. Now, having said that, we are committed to flying out our missions with NASA. And so this is but yet another stepping stone on our path to do that.
And I would echo what John said. The flight's extremely important to the commercial crew program as well. We would like to bring online a second space transportation system to the International Space Station. This flight is hugely important to us as well. And so we have been side by side with John as we go through each of the aspects of flight readiness. In terms of what we did to strengthen our approach to the flight software and the hardware-software integration, we added some expertise on our team and strengthened the depth of the team with hardware-software integration experts, software experts, to help better understand the changes to the software, the changes to the processes, and reviewed each of those. We then went in also and looked at the hazard reports and any controls in the hazard reports that dealt with the flight software or how the flight software talked to the avionics system, and we strengthened that team. We made sure we went and reviewed all the interface control documents that Boeing has with the hardware software. We looked at those. We also, as John said earlier, we are a strong participant in the independent validation and verification of the software. We review those software test reports, and we dig into any particular findings that might be in those reports. So we really did beef up our software team. We realized how important it was to the success of this mission, and so we've been side by side with Boeing through all the testing that John has talked about in their hardware-software simulation lab called ASIL, and the mission rehearsal that they went through as well.
And our next question is from Rachel Nail at Florida Today.
Hey there, this question is for Kathy. Kathy, you talked about the flight readiness review being a time of reflection. I'm curious, when you reflect on the last 17, 18 months, all this hard work you guys have done, what were the really hard moments? What were the good moments? And did you doubt you'd ever get to this day?
First, I never doubted we would get to this day. When you look at this team, and I will tell you, I was at the launch. We were in the ASOC, 18 months ago, and the flight control team that really saved the vehicle that day did a phenomenal job. And I remember I walked out of the ASOC, drove in my car over to the Boeing Mission Control Center area and walked in, and there was a team in there that was diligently working to get as much data from that flight as they could and to get that vehicle back. And it was a joint NASA-Boeing team that was working to get that vehicle back so that we could do this again. We've been getting ready to do this again since December 2019. And so it was just about, when are we ready to do it? And I am so incredibly proud of this team that they have not hurried. They have taken their time. They've made sure that they went through and checked the progress and decided when to go fly. And now's the right time. Today we decided now's the right time. This team's ready to go. This vehicle is ready to go. And we need to go take this learning that we got a lot of learning from that first demonstration mission, and we've rolled that all into our learning on this demonstration mission. And we'll learn from this mission, and we'll roll it in and go fly our crewed flight test. But I never doubted this team.
And our next question is from Hanukkah Waitering at space.com.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I'm just wondering, compared to OFT-1, have there been any changes in the planned flight profile or the exact timeline of events from launch to docking? And also, how will it compare to the future crewed flights? Thanks.
This is John Vollmer. I'll take that one. So the trajectory is going to be very, very similar to what we did on OFT-1. We do have a maneuver that we will be performing shortly after separation, and that will be to point one of our antennas to ensure that we have good communications. The rest of our mission profile will be nearly identical to what we flew, we're planning to fly on the OFT-1 mission. So we'll be looking forward to going through and completing our demonstrations. So we will, after the orbital insertion burn, we will go forward. We will do our several burns to get us in a inclination to get in proximity to station. From there, we will we'll do some demonstrations of the vehicle performance and navigation performance. And then once we get the safety go from station, we will enter an orbit that gets us close to a docking. That will be one of our major objectives. So we will do an approach, we'll back out, and then we will, once given the go, we will come in and complete docking. And then we'll go through the rest of the docking event and then undock after our operations on station.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone to enter the queue. Our next question will be from Emily Speck at WKMG.
Hey guys, this question is for Joel or anyone who can answer. Can you talk about any of the cargo going up on Starliner? What kind of supplies are in those 400 pounds? And then I also wanted to know, with COVID cases back on the rise, have there been any recent virus-related issues preparing for launch? Thank you.
All right, from a cargo standpoint, we're going to be bringing up things like food for the crews, clothes, hygiene items. On the way home, we're bringing home some. We'll bring home some science hardware. We're also bringing home some air tanks that we've had on board that we've used. We've depleted the air on board. We'll bring the tanks home, refurb them, and fly again. As far as COVID cases, you know, we continue to track that. I'll tell you, being from at the Houston Center, it's been pretty good in our area on the COVID cases. While we still have the constraints in place, the COVID really hasn't negatively affected us. So we've learned how to work remotely, and we're in the process of trying to continue those operations through the lessons learned. But from an ISS standpoint, the control centers have been rocking and rolling across the globe, not only in Houston, but at the other control centers as well.
And of course, today at the Flight Readiness Review, this is Steve Stitch. We wore a mask in the room today just to protect ourselves, and obviously we've vaccinated the people that have chosen to get the vaccine. It's been a very good mitigation step as well. So I agree with what Joel said.
And our next question is from Ben Ionata at Aerospace America.
Hi, this would be for John Vollmer, I think. The peer review process, I hope I got that term correct, that you referenced earlier, is that a process that's going to be sustainable, something you'll do for, all future missions, or something you would streamline? And did that bring extra cost with it in terms of personnel?
Yeah, so to answer your question, it is a process that we will continue to do. We've baselined it into our system, and we've not only baselined it, we've automated it. So it is something we'll continue to do. It does require additional discipline. We did not necessarily bring on additional staff to do that. It was an expected part of their responsibilities, so it was more of a coordination and completing the coordination than it was extra work, if you will.
Thank you.
And our final question is from Irene Klotz at Aviation Week.
Thanks, Josh. I have a couple of related questions about Soyuz, probably for Kathy. The last time we spoke, the proposal for the barter seats on commercial crew for Soyuz was at the State Department. Has anything progressed these last few months? And also, until Boeing is flying Starliner, you're still in the same position that you were back in February when you put out that other solicitation and got the seat on the MS-18 flight. So what are you planning on doing until Starliner is ready for crew transport? Thanks.
So, Irene, this is Joel. I'll start, and then Kathy can add. That agreement is out of the State Department. It's the authority is in NASA's hands, and we've started that work with Roscosmos. We've gotten the initial comments, and we're going through the process where we go back and forth, where they ask questions, we update, we send back, and then in parallel, they'll be submitting to their government for approval. So that process is moving positively, and we're excited to go see that. And so from, as far as ISS operations today, as you've probably heard, Roscosmos is working to fly what they call a movie mission, fly an actress and a producer on the October Soyuz. With that plan in place, Mark Vande Hei and one of his cosmonaut colleagues, Pyotr Dubrov, would stay up there for a year. And so we would have that contingency plan, but we still have the plan where Crew 3 launches while Crew 2 is up there. But if for some reason we had some challenges, we do have coverage for the next few months.
Thanks.
All right, and then we'll go to Kathy.
So like I was saying at the very beginning, today really is a culmination of a ton of work from this team, not just over the last 18 months, but years. We talked a little bit about the work that really was started 10 years ago for us to get ready. And so we need to keep going. This team's going to keep going. They're going to take it one step at a time. We've got some important work that we need to be doing over this next 8 days to get ready for the launch. We're going to get through the launch. We're going to get through on-orbit operations. Then we're going to get this vehicle down. And then you guys can all start bugging Steve Stitch again about what's the CFD, and John Vollmer about what's the CFD launch date. But we're going to do this one step at a time because we're going to do it right. And, we've got the crew's lives in our hands. And everybody sitting here today understood that we have the crew's lives in our hands. And this is an important demonstration for us to buy down part of that risk before we go put crew on these vehicles. So put on your seatbelts, get ready to go. This is going to be an exciting year for the Starliner team. You guys have already seen it's been an exciting year for Joel and Steve already, and many more to come. So I don't know who was talking about, that they're getting worried about all the missions we have coming, but our job right now is to keep them coming and keep you all as busy as possible. So I think we're doing a good job of that right now. Thank you all very much for being here today, having interest in this, and we're going to have an exciting couple weeks to come. So keep paying attention. Thank you.
And that's going to wrap things up for us here tonight. NASA and Boeing's Orbital Flight Test 2 is targeting a launch to the space station at 2:53 p.m. Friday, July 30th from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We'll have live launch coverage starting at 2 p.m. Next week, we'll have more to come on this important mission, so follow us online, social media, and NASA television. Learn more about this important mission at nasa.gov/commercialcrew. Have a good evening.